Hello and welcome to the Two Act Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Adi, and I'm joined by my
Jon.
other co-host. You know what? I always seem to not get this on cue, but
That's okay.
we'll get there one day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm joined today with my other co-host, Jon, and boy, do we have something to talk about today. We're going to be covering a anime film from the 90s, just in time for its 30th anniversary. A film called Ninja Scroll, directed by Yoshiaki Kawajiri. And the synopsis goes as follows. So, Jubei, who is a masterless ninja who travels the land alone, lending his services to those with gold or a worthy cause. His fearsome abilities have served him well, but a plot to overthrow the government in feudal Japan threatens to end his wandering ways and possibly his life. So, the reason why I chose this film because it's been on my radar for a while. I've always known about it, but I've never really watched it. But I know that it's been regarded as one of those films in the 90s that were a gateway to anime from east to west, back when animes were still kind of an underground thing. And this film, alongside the likes of Akira and Ghost in the Shell, which I'm sure most of you have heard of, are regarded as one of the most influential animes to ever exist. And Ninja Scroll is very much unlike the rest of the two, which is more of a cyberpunk genre. This is very much a ninja samurai set film in 17th century Japan, but it's got intense ultra violence. It's got some really colorful characters, some shocking violence, and it just all the research I picked up shows how much of a influence it was when VHS was still a thing and people would spread this around in the 90s. Certainly the generation that grew up in the 90s. I wasn't even born when this film came out, but it's an interesting one. We'll go with opening thoughts. So, Jon, what did you think about the film?
First thought I had while watching this, like, oh, that's definitely an R-rated movie. Like a guy gets like bisected, like in like the first like couple minutes of the movie. I'm like, Jesus Christ! Like I would have loved this as a teenager. Like this is straight up like Elfen Lied, like levels of violence, which is another anime that popularizes just body parts flying all over the place. And I'm like, this is really adult. And then you see some TNA, and you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then you have a lot of more like adult themes. And this felt like Naruto, like got really, really drunk and started throwing kunai all over the place. Like it was wild.
Well, it's funny you say that because I would many, not even I, would regard this as the godfather of ninja movies when it comes to, or ninja genre when it comes to anime. So it's a funny thing you mentioned Naruto because I don't know if like you said, it is just on another level with what it's trying to throw at you, and that brings an important point because let's be clearly honest here. I mean, violence. I'm sure a lot of animes show violence, but there's an amount of visceral scenes in this film that involve very disturbing scenes of rape and, of course, distressing violence that may not be for the faint-hearted. So this is definitely not a film you should watch with your kids. That being said, I just wanna talk about the creator of this piece, just to give you some context. the director Yoshiaki Kawajiri is regarded as one of the most revolutionary directors in anime history. Before this, he made another film called Wicked City, which is equally very polarizing. And he also made another film similarly in the vein of Ninja Scroll called Vampire D Hunter Bloodlust, which is, again, a very highly regarded film. But to talk about Ninja Scroll, this film was very influential. It inspired a lot of animes, and it also inspired The Matrix directly. In fact, the creators of The Matrix were so impressed by Kawajiri's work that they collaborated with him after this, and they made a anime version of The Matrix called The Animatrix, which is an anthology series set in the world of The Matrix. So what's interesting is, he kind of, this director who's now, he primarily works, he's still active in the industry, but he primarily works as a storyboard artist. He's got a very big profile with television and anime and films, but now he's mostly working as a storyboard artist for most of the big animes that are still running or have just concluded, such as I think he's a storyboard artist for Frieren, also for Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen. I believe he also did a few episodes of Attack on Titan. So he's still working today, but he hasn't really directed anything off lately. So it's just interesting. I just thought we should bring that up because a lot of the great masters of the 90s and the 80s, they're still there, but there's definitely a shift, and we don't see the old masters as relevant today as they were back in the day. But that being said, I would like to go with my opening thoughts. I know I'm dragging this a bit, but
do it.
I just wanted to say that this was a ride throughout, and I was glued. Even though I must say that narratively, the plot is thin, and there's not much in terms of like depth with how the plot develops. It's pretty straightforward, right? But it just feels like you're watching like a video game. You're like playing a video game where you're seeing a character go through different boss fights, and they're all insane bosses that he has to overcome until he meets the final boss. And along the ride, he encounters a few characters that make for an interesting watch. So I guess we'll start with Jubei. What did you think of the protagonist?
He was cool. Jubei, he's like he's the samurai ninja guy that can't be beat, or at least we think. He's unstoppable. Unlike some of the characters where they're like physically invulnerable for the most part, like that big stone guy. Like he's kind of like that in a sense that he's just skillful with the blade. Yeah, I really enjoyed Jubei's the actor's portrayal. I watched the dub, so I thought it was pretty decent.
Yeah, I agree. I also watched the dub, and I was largely quite impressed with the variation in vocal performances. I thought Jubei was also a very honorable hero, worthy to root for. And the pulpy boss fights he has to endure builds on some amazing action set pieces. And I think like it's true. He kind of does feel like he's invulnerable. Just the way he keeps getting through each boss, but it's not without taking some damage. It almost reminded me of like the Batman Arkham City game. I don't know if you ever played it.
Yeah, I played it.
Where he's kind of like he's kind of like a hero on a quest, and he's encountering multiple villains, and he's poisoned. and he's suffering from. So midway through, he meets an elderly character, a crafty government spy named Daquan, who poisons him with a ninja star and blackmails him to collaborate with him to take down the Devils of Kimon and the mercenary Genma, who is the main big bad villain trying to take gold from a ship in Kashima. And the whole premise is centered around a village that is completely killed off by a plague, or assumed by a plague. And then they Jubei sort of reluctantly agrees to work for this guy for 100 pieces of gold and an antidote that will cure this poison that he's been infused with. And he also comes across another female character called Kagero, who is working for I believe, a clan called Mochizuki, and she is a female ninja who you see in the opening scene where her entire comrades get killed off by this stone demon. And I think we should put a spoiler warning here because we're going to get deep into spoilers.
Spoiler warning for a 30-year-old anime, Ninja Scroll.
Yeah, so I guess it starts with she gets. I was shocked, by the way. This is the first time I've seen an anime film blatantly show rape in this way, and I don't know what did you think of that scene? Because I feel like it definitely set the tone in terms of like
it was icky.
If you thought this was gonna be a nice joy,
right.
I don't know. Dragon Ball Z Naruto-esque ride. Buckle up, bitches. You're gonna get smacked in the face.
Yeah, this wasn't
from that scene onwards.
Yeah, it wasn't for the faint of heart, like you said earlier. Yeah, it's like that. You see titties and you're like, okay, well, in anime, that's pretty normal. Like they don't show anything else. But then like the depiction of rape is just like, oh, this is just gross. And then the guy. And of course, they have to make him an ugly bastard. He's the ugly bastard archetype, and he's just like, ugh. He's like, I'm gonna lick you from head to toe, or he says something of that mind, and I'm just like, so grossed out. I'm like, is this Adi? Did you show me like? Am I watching some hentai? Like, what is going on here? Like straight.
Not to blame. I mean, hey, you gotta realize I myself had not seen this film before, so I took no pleasure beforehand. If I knew these things, I would probably give you a heads up. But that being said, that scene is memorable for more than one reason, not just because it's horrifying, but also because Jubei enters the scene and he's just sat there and he interrupts this dude who's clearly molesting this poor girl. And he's like, excuse me, I'm a bit lost. Could you give me a few directions? And the guy just like tries to like shrug it off, and then they get into a fight, and he obviously saves her. And then turns out when he encounters him again, this devil who's got the ability to turn into stone, so he's impenetrable. He gets killed by Jubei, but later we learn that's thanks to Kagero as a character who is filled with toxin. So anyone who attempts to kiss or sleep with her gets poisoned and gets killed. So I thought that was like something that really made her character stand out compared to like, in a normal situation, you'd expect her to play most animes, I'd assume, at least early in the day, early in the 90s or whatever, would not give their female characters necessarily the portrayal of being independent. They would often be used in scenes that were negatively displayed, or they would be used as pawns. But it was really good to see that first of all, she's a ninja. She's a badass on her own right. But she's got this I don't know if it's a cursed gift or if it's a thing where she is poisonous, and anyone ultimately who tries to get close to her gets killed. Until she obviously meets Jubei, and you can see that she starts to develop feelings for him. But he is as honorable as ever because he's just morally, his compass is just very stable. What did you think of their relationship?
I thought it was serviceable. The plot in this show, like you said, it's very loose. Watching it, I kind of got lost. I felt like I was missing a couple episodes. Like if I was watching like a daily anime, they would have like done like 7 flashbacks or something, and that's why I feel like a lot of this like love interest, it's not really that built up. And I also agree that Kagero's like entire character, how she's not necessarily a damsel in distress, but if she is, then whoever's gonna be the kidnapper is gonna die. Like I thought that was neat. It's cool to have badass women in anime and movies, and somebody to root for.
Yeah, for sure. I thought that made it stand out for me, and I agree with you that there's not a lot of context in this film, and I think I was reading up where the director said one of the toughest challenges was actually trying to simplify the plot and avoid like having too much exposition in dialogues. And I think they definitely went for an approach that was more show, don't tell. And although there was a few flashbacks which primarily just set up Jubei's character, where he had to kill his own clan because he was betrayed by Genma, who was, I think, the leader. And then he had to kill Genma by decapitating him. It turns out Genma, the big bad villain, is got supernatural abilities to regenerate himself like Deadpool.
Yeah.
So so it turns out he's still alive, and not only is he alive, but he's assembled an evil Avengers of Devils called the Devils of Kimon, who are each very interesting caricatures of characters of like bad boss fight villains who Jubei encounters with Kagero through this whole pursuit of trying to get to Genma and foil his big plan. But I wanted to say that despite the surface level script, it does make up for it more than makes up for it with its amazing action set pieces, which, believe it or not, is each frame is hand drawn. Mm-hmm. There's no reused frames. Everything is hand drawn. This was back in the day where CGI was still in its infancy. And you can see the quality in the action. The storyboarding is on another level. The color palette is absolutely gorgeous, especially like each boss fight is set within a very distinct color palette. Like the guy with the bee is set more like in a water pond. The fight with the blind swordsman is set around like green bamboo sticks, and then there's also another fight with a shadow devil, which is set in this orange twilight-like setting with shadows around. So I was just blown away by the technical craft of this. I think like it's very deconstructive in its approach of like fights. And an observation that I had was like, if you watch a lot of like, if this anime, or like if you watch animes today, or if you watched this today, if it was made today, you'd see like each boss fight would be like 20 minutes long, and they'd have like crazy jump cuts, nuclear punches. They'd be like these over the top exaggerated scenes that would drag the whole action out until something would happen. But what I found funny, and what I don't know if it was intentional or not, but what I liked about it was the fact that it had this great blend of comedy and like violent action. And like if you look at like, the action sequences, uh, it uses fantasy to set up its demonic villains and its powers apart, but reality fucks them each time as they meet their abrupt death whenever they fight him. And I found that to be hilarious. What did you think of that?
Yeah, so I liked some of the scenes. They're very stylized, and they some of the like the shading techniques. I really like that. The great use of shadows to like obscure like what's exactly going on, but you kind of get the same idea. Like for instance, like the I like the samurai fight in the bamboo. It really calls back to like old samurai films, stuff like that. There was I found out something about the film. It originally was supposed to be 2 films. They were both supposed to be 45 minutes each. The storyboard was written this way, which is kind of explains why there's climax scenes in the first and the second half of the film, which I thought was kind of interesting. And that kind of makes a lot more sense of why I'm kind of lost in some parts. Like I also enjoyed the stylistic fights and all that, especially the animation. It was very however you pronounce it, the sakuga. It's so when I would like watch like something like Demon Slayer, you're watching it for like these awesomely animated fights, and I can definitely see where something like that would take from something this long ago, and where all these action shows where they take a lot of those frames and a lot of those like stances and stuff like that to really tell what's going on in the scene and how the fight's going. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right, by the way. It was meant to be 2 films, and I guess for whatever reason they decided it was best to make it into 1 film. In my opinion, it still works because you can see a progression, and I must highlight like the pacing is excellent throughout this film. Like it may not have plot and it may not have lore to like really get you, deep down invested in like context of what's going on, but it does entertain, and you don't feel the runtime. In fact, before you know it, you're just too invested with what's going on in the scene to really understand what's happening. So I really liked it on a technical level, and it's interesting because there is a series that followed this film. I believe it came out in 2003, but it was not as successful, particularly because it was nowhere near as violent or nowhere near as mature in its approach. Obviously, it couldn't because it was probably intended to be viewed in television, but also it had a sequel in the works that never really came into fruition that Kawajiri was meant to direct. I think they had issues in securing financing. And what's interesting is that this film was actually not a big hit in Japan when it came out. It wasn't particularly well known. This film actually became a sensation in the West and in the outside world. People who like consumed anime for the first time came across this on VHS and they were like blown away. They thought they were on acid. Like, what did they just watch? Like they never seen violence or any forms of like adult themes in animation before, or at least not portrayed in this way before. So for many, it was like I said, it was an ambassador for people to get into animes and get them curious about animes that exist, that weren't necessarily made in the West. So for that reason, I think it does have some sort of relevance and some sort of legacy. There's still a fan base about it, but that being said, it's not a perfect film. It does have its flaws, but did you have anything like any thoughts on the pacing or in terms of like the villains?
Yeah, I liked that there was a different villain for like every like fight. I enjoyed that. That would have been really boring if it was like one guy you just won't get down. Like if it was like the main bad guy like the whole time, that would have been hella annoying. But the thing that really stuck out on me, not to completely derail this conversation, but holy shit, the chief that can't stop having sex while he's giving orders, that guy's a real asshole. Like when I was watching this, Kagero's giving her what happened in the fight or whatever, and then like the chief, he's just banging away, and I'm just like, okay, this is why these people were sharing this damn movie, because all this crazy shit was happening, and you ain't gonna get it on your cartoons on daily TV.
Yeah, the Chamberlain of the Mochizuki
nuts.
tribe. I think that's the clan Kagero belongs. That was insane because she's clearly getting raped. That poor lady.
No, that was
insane.
insane.
And he's just like, yeah, he's just going on about his business, barking orders at her and telling her to like. And you can see that the whole setup is so corrupt, and I think that says so much about the world it's set in, that they're like really dark, sadist characters who rule Japan or governing feudal Japan. I don't know historically how accurate that is. I've seen Shogun, and I've seen similar things being, portrayed in the show Shogun, but I don't know. I think there's an element of reality in it, but it was shocking. And it did, you're right, it did sort of stick out because right from there you knew, like, what is Kagero doing? Like, why would she care to be in this clan who are clearly corrupt? And this Chamberlain is just a fucking asshole. Like, you don't want to be like following this dude, but fate has its own way in the story, and then she ends up joining up with the rest, but it ultimately proves to be fatal for her because she does get killed. Did you see that coming?
Oh, I thought everybody was gonna die. After you see like the first couple scenes of the film, you're just like, okay, well, we're living in Attack on Titan land and everyone's gonna die, which I thought. Sure, I didn't feel like it pulled any punches. It didn't not kill anybody other than the guy who regenerates like Deadpool. In fact, Wendy Lee voiced Kagero in the dub, and she's known for doing a lot of popular anime characters like Haruhi. She even did Jotaro in I think like the third season of JoJo. Which I have an ear for a lot of dub voices. Like I know when I hear.
She also did one of the characters in Akira as well.
Oh,
so
okay.
That wasn't her first rodeo.
Yeah, no, she's been around for probably 30 years, as long as anime's been around. And I have, like I said, I have an ear for this. So when I hear Johnny Young Bosch, I hear Steve Blum, I hear any of these all-star casts in the dub. I was kind of surprised because the dub, as good as it sounds, a lot of early dubs, especially in the 90s and the 80s, they have like varying quality. Sometimes you get something that's funny bad, and other times you get something that's just like tops out of this world, like how good it is with the technology they had and how much little money they had to pay these people.
Yeah, true. It is that is the thing, and most people, I guess, wouldn't even know who these voices are. They surely didn't know who they were back then, nope. And I don't even know like how quick the dubbing was for this film. So that's another question to be asked. But that being said, the performance in the dub, I read a lot of reviews about the dub saying the dub was actually very exceptional and had a lot more vocal range than the sub. So I gave it a shot, and I didn't have any issues. I thought they were quite distinctive, like a bit cartoonish at times. Like the guy voicing Daquan is a typical like old dude type,
right.
Like old asshole wise character, kind of like a Yoda type character who's just there to like pick on the hero and like try to get him to do things. And I guess the guy voices. I mean, there were all these villains that were pretty intense, and they were voiced very interestingly. But more than anything, it was the animation that got me.
Right.
Each devil was frightening in its own extent, and like the Medusa lady he meets, where the snakes that are tattoos on her body fly across and charge at him. I was like squirming in fear. And then we spoke about the stone-faced dude who was he was like just evil and really hideous. And then the blind swordsman was, I thought, probably the most like human-looking dude. And then you had the bee character, the guy who was hiving bees in his back. So I thought like each of those characters were like really well designed, and they made for like compelling villains in a ride. But like I said, none of them overstay their welcome, and they are all killed off as they should be until Jubei meets the final boss who can't be killed per se. So like the pacing of it all really got to me. I really enjoyed like I said, the way it was so fast paced. I never felt bored. I never felt checked out. I was always invested in what's happening. And even though I knew, like, look, we all knew this is all going to lead into a big confrontation in the end, and he's probably going to have to win it for whatever we know. But it never bothered me, Whereas I see a lot of, like, stuff today where they try to be over the top. They try to be extra, and they think they can be thought-provoking by adding all these layers. But sometimes good storytelling is just simplicity. It doesn't really necessarily need too much.
Yeah, I can see.
What do you think?
I can see that. It's definitely style over substance, if you've ever heard that term. It's very stylish. So much so that it doesn't necessarily need to be very deep and like well thought out. Like the storyboarding alone definitely carried a lot of this movie, for sure. It shows why he's still working in the industry doing that. It's his bread and butter, and it's the thing he's the best at, for sure. There's like a lot of parts of this movie where, like you said, you were like very not bored. Like I did have some moments in this movie where I was like, I don't even remember the bee guy like at all. Like I don't even know what he looks like.
You don't remember?
No.
He's pretty memorable.
No,
he pops up. They go to the village where they're all dead, and you see the hive of bees.
Yep,
and then...
I can't even remember what he looks like. I saw bees, and I was like, oh, this is like Inuyasha, like Saimyosho. Like I was like, so like a lot of things that are like in this time period, the feuding states era, like the warring states period, also called the Senjoku Gadai. From what I know about like history, there was a lot of like lords and stuff that were all like doing a power grab for parts of Japan, and that's why you had all these like shoguns like leading regions and areas. That's why you have like a lot of these name drops that you kind of like recognize, like Tokugawa and stuff like that. That's why when they used like some of those names, I was just like, oh, okay. Well, I know there's the story is very surface level, but I'm kind of interested. Like, are they going to start like referencing to like Hanzo and Goemon and stuff like that? Like all these like great samurais. Am I going to start seeing this? Like, what's going on? Yeah, I was definitely took for a trip. Like it was definitely a wild ride for sure.
Was there any issues you had with I don't know, characterization or content or genre? What were your issues with it, if you had
My
it?
issues, a lot to just do with just me not knowing where I am in the story. Like feeling like that at the start of this, where I said like I kind of felt like I missed a couple episodes. Like a lot of this like context, like I was kind of like lost. Like they were using like all these names, and I'm like, am I supposed to remember these? This is 90 minutes. How am I going to remember any of this stuff? Like it's kind of like I feel like I'm getting jerked around, and not in a good way. I just felt I was lost in the story that there really wasn't much of. But I did like the final confrontation. I thought that was very interesting, in how Kagero wasn't bulletproof like everybody else, like sword proof.
Yeah, that was made a worthy final boss fight,
Right.
for sure.
Right, and then he just like cutting off his head, or he's like punching him and headbutting him, just guttural, just fist fight, and he's still getting back up, like he's like the Terminator, like for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Until it gets to the point where the ship that they're fighting on is blown up, and the gold that's been stored in there starts melting, and he starts. He basically, I think, he kicks him down to the melting gold, and he says, "Burn in your golden hell, Genma."
Oh, what was the
And,
line that you said that the dub was famous for?
That was, you know what? I think I might have to look it up. Because
Sorry to call you on the spot. I thought about that earlier, and then it completely evaded me.
it was it was a line that had something. It was a line that references light and shadows.
Okay.
But I can't remember
fair.
it on top of my head.
That's okay.
I have to come back to it later. But there was a discussion on this where they all seem to, well, at least the group that were talking about it seemed to agree that it was one of the best dubbed lines ever. But we digress.
Right.
I want to agree on the point where you said that you felt like you missed a couple of episodes. I did feel a bit lost in terms of like the political situation of where we're at, because you've got these clans, and like you said, I think the word you use, was it Tokugawa?
Something like that, yeah. One of the
I believe that
players.
was so these clans, so it's kind of difficult to gauge, because you just start off that way, and they're having these conversations, and the Daquan character being a government spy, there's not much known about who he's actually representing or what his motives are beyond just stopping the goal being shipped off. And it's difficult to gauge true character motivations, but what it does is it sort of, once you get into the, I guess, sandbox of like Jubei's character, and just the fact that he's now on a mission to get through, you're kind of like hooked onto his ride, and the rest kind of just falters away a bit in terms of what's happening with like who's planning against who. And I think like one of the things that the director said why he wanted to make a film on ninjas was because what he found fascinating about ninjas are they're constantly trying to trick each other. And I thought that really came across in the film, because they're constantly being, tricked by all these antagonists they keep encountering on the way. And even though it kind of gets to a point where you're kind of like feeling like it's a video game and you're like going through these boss fights, but it was a cool depiction of ninja action that I had never seen before in any other anime. Now, I know there's loads of fans of Naruto, whatever. I did watch a few Naruto shows when I was a kid, but I wasn't as blown away by the action as I was watching this one. Like, this one was on another level. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the animation or the storyboarding or the fact that it's hand-drawn, but there's artistic value to this that just beats most of the CGI anime sequencing that you see today. I just think that sets it apart in many ways. And he's kind of like a James Bondian character, don't you think?
Yeah, sort of. I could see that. He's the I'm going to use a term that everybody hates. He's a Mary Sue.
A Mary Sue. What is that?
Mary Sue
I've
is
never heard of
like
that.
a all-powerful, like all-knowing, always has like one step ahead of the bad guy, like type of like hero. Like there are a lot worse examples, like for sure, like Kirito and Sword Art Online. Like the guy that he'll never lose, and even when he loses, he wins. Like something like that. Like even something like Naruto, he always wins, even when he loses. And at the end of the episode, at the end of the arc rather, the villain will probably be his friend. If he hasn't become his friend, he will die, or he will become his friend and then die. Like so many characters in Naruto did. Like you said, you watched a little bit. I watched all that shit. I watched all the way through Shippuden, after the time skip. I watched all of that till it got to Boruto, and then I was like, "This is too much. This isn't for me." So we're done watching it.
Well, when a series goes on for that long, it's not that hard to gauge why it will lose its essence in a way. That's why I think this is a bigger accomplishment, because it does this in 90 minutes.
Right.
You know, it's short and sweet, and it's packed with violence and sure. I mean, you're not watching Nolan here. You know, you're not gonna get like Inception level of storytelling.
It's
but
not Charlie Kaufman.
end of the day, this is an anime that came out in the 90s. I wasn't even born when this thing came out, so you know, it's easy to look at it in the lens of today and in the lens of content we've already seen today and be like, oh yeah, it's cool, but you know, it's nothing extraordinary. But when you look at it in terms of like the fact that it came out at that time when anime was not much of a thing outside of Japan, and this helped drive that up, I think it packs a lot of cultural significance. And it was really funny to see people say that this was kind of like the first time they ever watched like nudity in animation, or this is the first time they watched something where the parents like thought they were just watching cartoons and then realized this is not meant for them,
Right.
and not meant to be watched by this is meant to be watched by a mature audience. But like I said, the whole VHS thing, it really was back when VHS was still a thing. This was being passed around, bootlegged, left, right, and center, and created this huge wave of following alongside those other two films that we spoke about, and created interest for anime that previously didn't really exist. I mean, the only thing I can assume that existed were direct-to-video OVAs, and those guys pretty much could show whatever they wanted to. Like, they had no restrictions. They didn't have any censorship. But that begs the question: do you think the level of graphic violence and shocking scenes depicted in it is warranted, or do you feel like it kind of comes across as just trying to do it for shock value, or do you feel like it's really earned in the world that it's established?
Right. Well, I can definitely agree that there's a good chance anime either wouldn't exist in the West without this, or as a contributing factor. I would say that if it wasn't as violent if it wasn't as violent as it is, I don't think there would be any cultural relevance, just because it's shock and awe. It's a word of mouth. It's you lend your friend this VHS and his mind is blown, and then his friend is talking about it and they're lending the VHS to him, and then everyone's getting them stuck in the VHS, like on the titty picture as their parents like come in the room. Like it's like this. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Children of a generation before us, they had their socks blown off when they were passing this around. When it came, when somebody sent them from Japan or wherever they got the recording from, sent it to the U.S. or sent it to the U.K. or sent it to, any English speaking country. Then they gave it to their friend, and then it became like kind of like in the pre-internet times, like it was hey, did you hear about this this cartoon that has titties in it and people getting their head cut off? Like, yeah, absolutely, man. Let's watch it. Yeah, we're going to all watch it when my mom goes to work.
Yeah, you nailed it on the head right there. And that's kind of what makes things, especially in film and TV, special. I don't necessarily remember stuff which was famous because it became a cultural phenomenon just by being put out by studios. I remember stuff that I grew up watching as a kid, whether it was exactly as you say, DVDs, VHS, or word of mouth, or your friends got together and you saw a crazy film and that memory stuck with you. And I think that's just a testament to like how cinema and content across the world, there's so much there to offer to the world that we simply may not necessarily be used to watching or used to accessing. But if you do give stories from another corner of the world a chance, it may actually blow you away. I mean, you're the biggest example here. I mean, you're a proper seasoned anime consumer. Like, you watch like what? How many animes have you seen?
It's way over 200. If you calculate how much, like, I'm not the most learned anime viewer, but I'm definitely above the average. It's something like 8 months of total anime I've seen in my entire life. And I have heard of Ninja Scroll before this. I just never got around to watching it. Like, I was watching Akira. I was watching Ghost in Shell. Like, I was watching all these great old 90s animated movies, but you kind of got to get like in a mindset and a time of frame to watch something like that, especially if you're going to watch older anime as somebody that's been watching anime for a long time. So like, I'm watching whatever's airing. I'm watching, 2 or 3 series that are currently airing. Like, I'm watching Oshi no Ko. Like, I'm watching whatever the new Demon Slayer arc is. Like, I'm watching all these great shows because...
Which I heard got horribly slated for being filler.
It kind of was. Like, so the last season of Demon Slayer was the Hashira training arc. And in the manga, I want to say it was maybe 3 or 4 chapters, which they kind of like strung out to like an entire like a 13 episode arc, which is kind of wild. There was an entire episode where they're like throwing paper airplanes. And they're like, why is this in Demon Slayer? Nobody cares about this. And then like that whole arc like ends as they're like falling into like the big bad's fortress. And it's just like, okay, so are we getting movies? Are we getting more anime of these crazy ass fights that are about to happen that we did not know were happening? Like, at least I didn't, because I didn't read the manga. Like, I thought this is years away. Like, this is 5-10 years away. Because, I'm used to ongoing shonen, like One Piece, like Dragon Ball Z, like Bleach, like all these shows that, unless it's One Piece, have gone on hiatus, came back with a new anime, came out with a spin-off, did a time skip, and then you got some...
Sort of revamped and refreshed.
Like, Bleach is coming back.
The franchise.
And Bleach hasn't been on the air for like 6, 7, 8, 9 years. It comes back with the Blood arc, and that arc is fucking sweet. Like, I'm all in for it. I'm all in for all these shonen shows. I'm all in for watching something old. I'm all in for seeing an anime titty, Like, I'm all in. Not only anime, like I'll watch anything and everything. You give me a recommendation, I'll put it on a list somewhere.
As you should, yeah, because like we said, anime is. I mean, it blows my mind how much like people would have who've never seen animes before, and believe it or not, there's still people who haven't, but they always get surprised when they see certain animes and they just don't expect animation of this kind to offer like either, you know, dark content or thought-provoking content that can actually, you know, match up with Hollywood level of filmmaking. So or storytelling rather. So it's always an interesting one, and it's interesting you bring up Demon Slayer because, you know, I haven't really watched a lot of Demon Slayer beyond the film that came out like 4 years ago, which is I think Mugen Train. I really like that film, but I do remember seeing a bit of the episodes and losing my way out of it, and I of course read up on the latest Hashira training arc or whatever it's called, and I read that fans were quite disappointed because it was mostly filler preparing for the next manga, whatever, or the next arc. And that's interesting because you look at Ninja Scroll as a film, it works as a film for what it offers, which is just a pulpy ninja story filled with memorable villains, honorable character who is morally on the right side, but put in this sort of demented world where people are dark and corrupt, and he has to fight his way. He's essentially a vagabond. He has no master. He's just a wanderer. And then they made a show out of it, which didn't work, which is interesting because I was actually going to ask you, would you have liked this better as a show? You wouldn't have.
No.
Okay.
I feel like most of the substance in this is the over gratuitous violence. It is the well drawn out scenes. It's like that whole like hype. Like whenever a movie gets adapted at like a continuation of an anime, at least in the 90s, so you had all these censorship laws, you have all these things. So on your average like Japanese television network, you can't show blood. You can show nudity, but it has to be like very tasteful. It can't be. Definitely cannot show a rape scene. No, absolutely not.
No way.
No way in hell.
That gets shown.
Now, if you look at today's time and day, there was a network that was showing Interspecies Reviewers, which is a show about a guy that's hooking up with a bunch of different fantasy creatures. You have a show like what the hell is that crazy? I don't even remember the name of it. That's how risque it was. There's a lot of like borderline hentai, very ecchi shows that they're airing that no way in hell would have definitely aired in the 90s. But then you have something like something from the 90s like DNA Squared, which was one of those straight to VOA like animes.
Yeah,
and I remember watching that like on like we had some kind of cable program that had like a recording of these videos, and I'm like watching this, and I'm like a preteen. I'm like, ooh, titties. Like I'm watching this. Like I'm all about it.
Yeah, it's sensationalism in a way because despite the fact that they couldn't show those things maybe back in the day, they still existed direct to video or direct to VOA or whatever it was, where they were basically allowed to show whatever they wanted to. And I believe this film received a cut of 2 minutes that removed those scenes in the UK, I think, when it got distributed, or however it got distributed. So it is interesting that it wasn't safe from censorship. It did have a censored version before, I think,
the 10th anniversary,
the original. I don't know.
I think
there was always an unrated version, which was the original version, and then there was a version that got censored for certain audiences in certain countries. So I think they always existed two different versions of the film, but it's interesting. I don't know if they're gonna remaster it, considering that it's coming back in theaters in September.
Yeah, the rights are a mess. I was
I did hear
I was
about
looking
that.
into it.
It was a huge
like trying to watch this streaming. Good luck. Trying to watch this Blu-ray. If you can find it, good luck. Figure it out. Try to do it legally if you can.
I know, and that's what makes it a bit of a gem because it's not that accessible. You kind of have to really dig deep into the archives to find this out, and it's just a form of film that you wouldn't necessarily get today. I don't think filmmakers today would take that big of a risk to show such scenes. And what's important is like, yes, these scenes. Well, it kind of depends because, like, I mean, are we talking live action or anime?
You can get away with a lot more in anime.
Oh yeah, you can get away with a lot more, but like not on television.
No, not on television. No, it'd be like be a streaming.
You'd have
service.
to be
Yeah.
Exactly. It would have to be like Netflix, or it would have to be, I don't know. I don't think Crunchyroll can show certain scenes as well.
But if they get enough guff, they'll take it down. Interspecies reviewers the dub got taken down on Crunchyroll because enough people complained. And that's the thing.
Yeah, that's my point. That's what my point is. That it would, there's a high chance if this was made today, it will be brutally butchered and censored down to the T. That wasn't necessarily the case, even though it did get censorship to an extent, but it wasn't like canceled or destroyed or like complained to the point where it didn't exist or got removed. But that being said, I mean, I still appreciate the film, and I was thoroughly entertained. I don't think I can forgive the lack of substance in the narrative because of how the action set pieces, the character, the main protagonist is so worthy of looking. I mean, there's a scene where there was a scene where his only option to recover is to basically have sex with Kagero because she has the toxin to counteract the poison that he's already got in his system, and he chooses not to. What do you think of that scene?
I like that.
It's just a lot of people spoke about that moment.
I like that he was such a good man that he wouldn't take advantage of another person like that just to better himself.
I just felt for her because, like, by that scene, like, she's just been through hell. Right. And I was just like, oh my God, like, is this guy, like, really gonna, like, just save her from this crazy, sick, twisted villain? And the next thing you know, like, they're just gonna make up and, like, I don't know, is this what's gonna happen? But it was really, I must say, like, honorable to see that he did not do that. In fact, he did care for her, and he saw her as a woman, and he didn't see her as like an object or as a ninja. And I think that makes it does critique on her character. If you look at how she's perceived by the other characters around her, she's seen as dispensable. She's seen as, not a woman in many regards until she meets this guy who actually respects her and does not seek anything in return, despite saving each other's lives on multiple occasions. So it was moments like that that really made it up for me. And, it is ultimately a character-driven narrative, which I'm all in for. I always prefer stories that have, I believe, like stories that have strong characters. The narrative writes itself. You don't need to write it. And that was definitely the case for this film. But that being said, have you got any final thoughts?
Nope. I'm ready to move on to the rating if you are.
Yeah, all right. Go for it. I'll let you go first.
All right. I thought Ninja Scroll was pretty decent. I really liked the animation. Some of the fights really show the effort put into hand drawing them, like the shading and stuff like that. I like that a lot. Some of the script It's kind of confusing as a first time watcher. Maybe a little bit more context than I would have enjoyed it more. Um, there's so many good things about this, but I can't, in my good conscience, give this an insane glowing review. But I won't give it a bad score. I think I'll give it a 7. Like it was a good, it's a good review at least. Like I don't think this is a bad movie by any sense. I just feel like I'm lost in the sauce. What do you think, Adi?
Lost in the sauce.
Yeah,
No, that's a fair review. I completely get your points, like we debated. Personally, I was really, I don't know, I feel like it's a weird experience. I feel like I was in the 90s when I watched it because I got to experience what they did for the first time. And I had a similar reaction where I was just completely blown away by the action and the animation and the hand-drawn scenes, which was spectacular. The color palette was gorgeous. I do agree it is a little style over substance, but that being said, it's a pretty straightforward narrative. It's kind of like a revenge story in a way. You know, there's a whole betrayal arc portrayed in the backstory, which doesn't really come across, where you're meant to have this idea that the main character had to betray his own clan by killing them and had to kill the villain, and now he needs to get revenge or whatever. And I don't necessarily think it comes across. But that being said, culturally, I think this is a significant film. I don't think I've seen an anime film quite like it. And I was yearning for a ninja storyline that really was, pulls no punches. So I have a lot more positive things to say about it, I guess. But I'm going to settle for a 9 out of 10. And I was originally going to give it an 8 because I thought it did just enough. But I'm giving it a 9 because of what it holds up and the fact that it's 30 years now and it's still being talked about, and it's still regarded as one of the founding films in anime that really launched itself across the globe. And for that reason, I think it earns its status as one of the best anime films I've seen in a while. But that's my review.
Awesome. All right. So now we're going to go into our movie recommendation for next time. I know you're excited for this one. I know I am. So we'll go off something obscure to something super popular that nobody will shut up about. And I'm sure you've seen ads all around this video, all about it, or at least from other YouTubers. Yeah. So we're going to watch Deadpool and Wolverine. Who knows what the hell the plot is, but I'll give a brief synopsis, at least what I've found. Hopefully it doesn't spoil anything. So
do we really need a synopsis?
Sure, why not? I have something typed
All right,
out.
Here's the only synopsis you need to know, and this is Deadpool's synopsis. Fuck Wolverine.
Okay. Yeah, it takes place after, this is the third Deadpool movie, which the second one goes hard with the time travel. Like it feels a lot of time travel narratives are convoluted and confusing. Deadpool takes it up to 11. They don't really give a shit. I think what they're trying to do is try to rope this in with the MCU somehow. I don't know. I'm more interested in this than any MCU stuff, though. I think I'm going to have...
Of course they are. It's
I'm gonna
Marvel.
have a good
There's
laugh.
got to be a post-credit scene
Yeah.
with Nick Fury
and
recruiting
and,
the...
And
the
Deadpool's going to, like, pants him or something. I don't know. We'll see what happens. If you don't want to get spoiled for Deadpool and Wolverine, which by the time that we eventually do that review, you probably will have already been spoiled. We'll still,
Good luck with that.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Do you have any expectations for this movie?
Nope, I don't. In fact, I've not even seen the
Hell
trailers. But that being said, no one's safe. Literally, nobody's safe. You click on any post anywhere, you're going to come across spoilers. So beware.
Awesome. Well said. All right. See you, Space Cowboy.
See you then.